great deal of desire to say that it's basically Obama's weakness that has caused us to be in the state where ISIS came into existence, completely failing to look at the fact that actually they sprang out of a Sunni insurgency against the Americans. There. Some other interesting points he had to make too, suggesting that in fact ISIS in Libya now are, quote, making millions by selling oil they've got their hands onto to parts of Libya. Now that's a huge exaggeration to say the best. ISIS's current tactic is to disrupt the Libyan oil system. They've scared some platforms out of existence or operation. They've taken control of others. They may be selling some oil on the black market, but it's certainly not a million-strong daily trade, and it's the black market, definitely. It's a concern, but he went on to say that the US is doing nothing about it. Well, that's not true. We do know special forces are getting involved there. We do know there's a lot of surveillance over that country, and there have been US strikes there too. So a great simplification, but also one very dismissive take on the entire Arab Spring, where he basically said that many of the countries involved were countries that, quote, had no interest in becoming democracies. Well, we saw ourselves the great groundswell of people in the streets demanding change. Yes, it did not turn out the way that people had hoped, and perhaps history will say Barack Obama should have been more callous in backing Hosni Mubarak, perhaps in power there. But frankly, to suggest that people weren't interested in democracy is a slight simplification. And one other quote really stuck out at me. Fareed's already mentioned it, but to say the power of weaponry is the single biggest problem we have in the world today. Well, that to some degree was staggering, because you may argue much of the détente in the world now is because of nuclear weapons held by larger states. Would a whole series of much smaller weapons around the world make the world a safer place? It was somewhat confusing, and I think somewhat emblematic of the simplification here, and really too how we couldn't bridge the contradiction between saying we're going to be less involved as a power and only fight when we know we can win, victory with a capital V, he said, while at the same time to not necessarily put ourselves out on the front line as much before. So a huge confusion, I thought, between wanting to say America is going to get more involved around the world and bring peace to the world, he said, while at the same time too not extend itself further than necessarily needs to, or perhaps even withdraw at times and get others to do the fighting for it.
Yeah. He said the military option would be the last option, the very last option. He would want diplomacy, he would economic power, all sorts of things before the U.S. commits troops.